Good evening, West Grand. I wanted to reach out and just share some thoughts, provide some explanations, some clarity, um, and some clear guidance around how decision making takes place. I've gotten a lot of questions, a lot of texts, I know there's a lot of things on social media, um, really filled with a lot of anger, a lot of venom, a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment. Um, I'll be honest with you. I think everybody has every right to feel that way right now. Um, I feel that way. I'm extremely, extremely upset about what we're having to do and where we are. Um, I don't have the luxury of pointing fingers. I really don't. Um, my job is to follow the guidance. My job is to keep everybody safe. I know that's not what you want to hear, um, but that's reality. So again, I just want to acknowledge your anger and frustrations and disappointment, and again tell you you have every right to feel that way. Um, I do feel like from a communication standpoint, we can just continue to get better and better and better at our communication. Um, we continue to work with Grant County Public Health on notification around quarantines, but I'll get to that in a minute. So connected to this Parent Square post, there's a link that will take you directly to the Colorado Department of Health and Environment's guidance around everything to do with COVID cases in our schools. And what is it that we do when there is a positive or a presumed positive? And I know that's a word that has probably driven everybody nuts for the last 24 hours. Um, it certainly comes across as though we are just taking a shot and saying, well, they're probably positive. But that's actually not the case. That's not our terminology. That comes from CDPHE. And in that guidance document, if you want to open that up, you can follow along, or you can read it after you watch this video. But on page 21, which is the section that is all about what happens to the contacts. In that section, it talks about when a student, or it asks a question, when a student or staff is sent home because of a COVID symptom or a test, do the contacts need to be dismissed and quarantined? And then there's a flow chart. And right in the flow chart where you start, there's three questions. And if any of them are yes, you go right down to where you dismiss the cohort and they have to go into quarantine. So first question, staff or students sent home have a positive test. Okay, at that point, we have a no. Second thing, does the staff or students sent home have new symptoms and a close contact with someone with COVID-19? In the case of both our staff member and the individual student, the answer is yes. So once there's a yes there, it goes straight down and it says, dismiss contacts from school immediately, complete full quarantine period based on the last contact with the student or staff that was sent home. We don't make this decision and we did not create this document, but we are bound to follow it. There's no gray area for us in this area. We don't quarantine anyone. I want to make that clear too. That is not West Grand's job. That is not West Grand's decision. That is done by Grant County Public Health in following this document. We don't issue quarantine letters. Technically, they are the ones legally who notify you of quarantine. We have just been notifying you as a courtesy. We really have. We just feel like you should hear it from us. But we're not the ones putting anybody in quarantine. We don't make that call. The only call we make is then we take a look at how many kids do we have in quarantine? How many staff do we have in quarantine? In this particular case, we have more than 10 of our staff from West Grand High School that are in quarantine. We don't have the manpower to put people back into those classrooms so we can stay in person. That's the reason for the transition to remote. This is a process that we outlined very clearly with our board from the beginning, all the way back when we were starting to get this all finalized in July and in August. We've gone through these protocols with the board. The board is aware of the process that we follow. So when I notify the board, before we push out this information that we're going to have to move to remote. They've already seen this information. It's nothing new to them. It's also nothing that they have anything to or ability to do anything with either. Just like me, their hands are tied. We have to follow the state guidance. We just don't have the latitude to say, well, maybe we don't want to follow that guidance. It's unfortunate. Believe me, I would much rather not have to follow this. But I also can't, in good conscience, be okay with potentially allowing that virus to spread and spread. Now, I know we have a number of people that are on quarantine, and I got to tell you, I empathize with you. I sympathize with you. Some of you know this, some of you don't, but I just came out of my own quarantine. Just at the beginning of this week, I was finally able to come out of quarantine. I had been exposed to somebody who was positive as well. I went into quarantine, stayed in a room away from my family. It's terrible. I hated it. But then something worse happened, and I tested positive. So did the rest of my family. We've recovered. We're fine. But it doesn't change the fact that we've experienced it here in our household too. I'm deeply, deeply sorry that we now have to transition this way. I'm deeply sorry that football and Spirit have had their seasons cut short. I'm deeply sorry that homecoming isn't going to happen for us, at least not right now. And I'm sick for our students and for our community. But I got to tell you, throwing blame isn't helping us. It's not going to help us heal. I said at the beginning, we all are angry, and I get it. But pointing fingers and making accusations, putting nasty things on social media about the kid and the staff member, saying terrible things about my leadership team. Folks, they are working their tails off on behalf of you and on behalf of kids. I know you're angry, but it's not their fault. In fact, it's nobody's fault. The virus spread. It's one of those things right now we can't control. When I get to the things that really make me angry, that's one of them. Things we can't control. But you know what we can control is we can control how we react, how we model ourselves for our kids. I heard some things last night that we weren't fighting hard enough for our kids. So I reached out again today. Let's see, can we get another test today? Can we get a fast test this morning? Can we maybe find a way to get to a negative so we can get to where we need to be? And I'll be honest with you, it blew up in our face. I'd also tell you that yesterday, I know some people were disappointed that the announcement came really late. But the reality is the announcement came late in the day because I was doing everything I could with Grand County Public Health to try to push this back, to try to wait for a test result. And eventually we just reached a point we had to make a call. I know you're frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. Every day that we get to be with our kids in our schools is a blessing. We've been very, very fortunate with the K-8 school to this point. Unfortunately, with the high school, we haven't. I'm going to tell you, we're going to take a real deep dive and another deep look at what we are doing now and how can we maybe find other ways to where if we have another positive test, maybe the quarantine number, the cohort isn't as heavily impacted. We're going to really look hard at this. But we've got to move into solution mode now, folks. We all care about our kids. We all love our kids. And I get it. I can't say it enough times. I get your frustrations and your anger. But let's move into solution mode right now. We got to figure this out as a community. We got to figure this out as West Grand. Because if we continue to fight and bicker with ourselves, we're just going to tear ourselves apart. And that's not where any of us wants to be. So let's all take a deep breath and let's move forward. I know Miss Bauer sent out a letter to everybody on Parent Square earlier tonight, and I really appreciate her. I know Ms. Hooks has or will be sending out a letter to all of her students, and I really appreciate her for that too. Earlier today, Ms. Hooks, Ms. Bauer, and Ms. Cassib spent quite a bit of time working with Mind Springs to put a plan in place to provide as much mental health support for our kids and for the adults who need it as we go through the quarantine. I want to say thank you for listening to this. I hope you watched it all the way through to the end. Again, I'm truly sorry that we're at the place where we are. I wish there was more we could do to control this. I'm happy to visit with any of you. I'd love to hear your ideas. Let's sit down, let's have a quality conversation, because we know what's going on right now is not good for our kids. All of us do. So let's solve it together. Let's work together. Let's make We Are West Grand a true statement. I appreciate each and every one of you. Kids, hang in there. I'm thinking about you as much as possible. Like I said, I went through the quarantine too, man. It's no fun, but hang in there. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening.